Good morning. On behalf of MWR, I'd like to welcome you to our last of this series of workshops about relocating. We've got Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, and I did not stutter over that this time.
Time's the charm.
There you go. We have Tom Jangula, Mike Pelton, and Brian Maloney, who is also from the Kellogg Credit Union. He's going to be speaking the finance part of this. I'd like to ask you to shut your cell phones off or quiet them. We are filming this, so if you have any questions, please raise your hand and I'll bring a mic to you so that we can put this out for everybody else to learn from this as well. We may possibly have one more in the series. Excuse me, I had somebody come up with an interesting idea. So keep your eyes tuned, and if you're interested in learning about insuring your home, insuring your property, insuring your car, kind of watch for that one because it might be a good one. We're meeting tomorrow to make some decisions, and if we do it, then you'll see it out in the All News and on our website. And as always, look at our website, Facebook, and our MWR newsletter for any upcoming events. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Tom, and then he will run the show from there until the end, and then you get to hear me again.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. I actually, as we are on our fifth of these, I think, is fourth, actually seen a couple people that I know have been to more than one, so apparently they're not that bad because people are coming. My name is Tom Jangula, and I manage the offices in Battle Creek and Marshall for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. We were formerly Prudential Preferred Realtors. We are a company of 40 offices throughout most of Michigan and also northern Indiana, with approximately 700 agents between those offices. And then, of course, we're part of a national franchise networking across the country. Today, we will be covering a few different points. The first will be what your considerations might be for your primary retirement home. Then we'll be talking a little bit about the logic or choices of buying something now or buying a little bit later, depending on how close you may actually be to retirement. Then talking about what you might want to do with your current home, if you want to keep it, if you're interested in possibly leasing it, and then about financing options that could be available for you as you're selling your home, and or possibly not selling your home but looking at purchasing a second home. So starting with what your retirement dream home might actually look like. Lots of things to consider. Where do you want to live? If I just saw, yesterday I saw a posting which I'm sure you're all going to be really glad about, and that is that this winter is supposed to look pretty much like last winter. Lots of snow, lots of cold, so if you're going to get to retire, maybe you want to get out of Michigan. I don't know. I love it, but I'm not always online with those things. So if you want to stay in the area, or if moving north, moving out of state, where do you ultimately want to be is obviously your biggest consideration. If you're going to be there full-time or part-time, and again, then that's going to tap into some of the topics that we're going to talk about later, which is what do you do with your existing home, and how do you manage both of those properties if you're actually holding on to more than one home. One of the interesting things, people talk a lot about downsizing, and the reality is that getting a smaller home isn't always cheaper, especially if you're moving into, say, maybe a condo environment, as could be popular for folks who are moving into retirement mode. They'd like to have the convenience of not having to deal with maintenance. But in those type of environments, you start getting association fees, homeowner association fees, condo fees. And so downsizing isn't always going to be a less expensive option than a freestanding property. Do you like that convenience? There are people who, with all of the free time of retirement, are going to be thinking about what do you do to fill that time. And if you're in a condo, gardening gets a little more complicated, and people enjoy that. It gives you the opportunity to get out, exercise, And other property features are also important to start thinking about. My brother and his wife built their dream home a few years ago, and then they realized that it's 3 stories, and they can barely actually cover all 3 stories now, and they're suddenly realizing, what are we going to do? We built this house thinking it was going to be perfect for us, and we have to walk up a lot of stairs just to get to our main living area, let alone to make it to our bedroom. And so you really have to start thinking about the features and benefits. Bath facilities. There are so many things that they do now for ease of access in bathrooms. And does the home that you're buying have that? Would you need to remodel? What are the costs associated with those features? So there's a lot to factor in, and working with an agent who is actually accredited as a senior specialist. Those are folks who've gone through that process often, and so they might be able to help you think about some things that you're not necessarily thinking about right now. So as you're looking at potentially working with agents, you might want to ask them if they have accreditation as a senior realtor. Senior certified realtor, I should say. So that would be one thing to definitely take a look for as you're looking for a professional that works within that market. Questions that you guys might have on this particular segment about what you're going to be looking for in a potential home? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
Cost, just in general, what condos run these days? Or something of that nature with the added fees?
You're talking about list cost or homeowners, like the fees, or both?
To purchase.
Okay.
Yeah.
Boy, there is such a huge variety. I mean, and again, in this market specifically, or other areas? Okay. I think you can start getting into a condo at $100,000 and move up to $300,000 or $400,000 pretty quickly. It just again depends on if you're getting something on GoGuac, or if you're getting something locally that are not on the lake. If you say moved a little bit west to Kalamazoo, there are condos that you can get into for $50,000 or $60,000. A lot of times they're doing converted apartment buildings and kind of knocking out some space and building them a bit larger. And you can find some nice units in the $60,000 or $70,000 range over in the Kalamazoo marketplace right now, I know. But it's such a huge variance because just like a freestanding home, they can be very simple or they can be pretty amazing. And some of the benefits that they have, I mean, do they have a clubhouse? Do they have a swimming pool? Do they have tennis courts? What kind of features do they have available as well? Impact that stuff. Other questions? Alrighty, well, I'm sorry.
A couple questions. One comment. Battle Creek's inexpensive real estate. Anywhere you move out, pretty much the comparable houses go up. But the question I have is Zillow or Zillow?
Zillow?
Yeah, Zillow. The estimate prices. What's your feeling on those?
In certain markets, Zillow is a really effective tool. It's larger markets where there's a lot more volume. They use some mathematical processes to come up with those Z estimates that I won't even pretend to understand. And you can look here locally, and if you look at 3 properties, one of them might be dead on with what the house just sold for. One of them might be $50,000 high, and one might be $50,000 low. We have a property listed for sale right now that is listed at $900,000. The Z estimate for the property is $450,000. I'm thinking that their system's off a little bit, but it's just it's not a very good tool in these kind of markets.
Okay, what are these kind of markets?
I'm sorry, a smaller market like Kalamazoo or Battle Creek, and also where we don't necessarily have necessarily as much volume. Where if you're in a larger market, Chicago, Detroit, New York, where there are just, there are as many properties that sell maybe in a day as in a week or 2 weeks here. So they have more information to feed into the system.
Tom, you touched on condos and their cost to purchase them. Can you talk about the variance in the homeowners association dues?
Similarly, I think that it is such a wide variable. First of all, it's going to depend a bit on what they have for features and benefits. Again, do they have a clubhouse? Do they have a pool? Do they have tennis courts? Or is it just a basic maintenance structure, where you, again, it's almost like a converted apartment complex, and there isn't a whole lot of extra stuff there. But you can find, locally you can find places that are maybe $100 up to several $100s a month. So there's such a wide variance. Any other questions? Then I am going to hand it over to Mike.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. Sorry, I'm loud. Okay, we're talking about the age-old question, right? Buy now, buy later. Probably the most important thing for you to pay attention to would be the fact that there's two sides to every transaction, and that's something that's sometimes easily forgotten. So, for example, the first point, property values now versus later. Traditionally, over time, they're going to go up, right? They're like the stock market. They have ups and downs, but over the long run, they go up. So you can be thinking, well, if I hang on to my property for another 5 years, maybe it'd be worth a little bit more. That could be very true. It could be very false too, but likely it's going to be true. However, if you look at the interest rate factor of it, rates now versus later, that's one you definitely don't have a crystal ball on. They can go all over the place based on economy, and as Brian can tell you, a couple points in interest rate can make a huge difference to somebody in a monthly payment. So now let's say your house is worth $10,000 more. You're happy because you're going to get 10 grand more for it, but now there's fewer buyers that can afford it, and you may have a tougher time selling it. So it's really important, I think, for people to look at what the other side of the transaction is, because as this is about people retiring and moving on, or maybe a second home, a lot of the factor of interest rate may not even affect you, because many people are buying cash at that point in their lives. So you can once again get to the point where, leading into the next couple of bullet points, your property taxes and your options for what you want to do with the property may be different. Maybe you do decide not to sell it for some reason. Property taxes, homestead versus non-homestead, or now they call it principal residence exemption. They changed the term. It's the same thing. You pay a higher tax rate if it's not your primary residence. So let's say you decide to buy a condo on the lake or whatever the case may be, but you're going to hang on to your other property and rent it to the grandkids, or who knows, whatever you might choose to do with it. You're going to pay a higher tax rate on that. So that's something to take into concern in terms of what it's going to cost you on a monthly basis or annual basis to carry that property. If you do decide to rent or lease it, property management companies can be a very, very good option for you. They're basically a turnkey situation. You take a haircut off the top on the monthly that you're getting, and they do pretty much everything else for you. They're taking the calls at midnight that the toilet's plugged. They're taking the calls that the furnace is broken. You obviously pay for those repairs, but they're set up to handle that for you. Makes life a whole lot easier. Especially if you're not in the business of managing properties. And they also do a lot of good things about keeping you legal, so to speak. They know the rules. They have the contracts. They deal with all of that. You're not having to go hire an attorney to deal with that or hire an agent to deal with that. In fact, most agents don't even want to deal with rental stuff, so you'd probably be going to an attorney or a property manager anyway. So questions on that part? No? Good. I must be really good at this. Selling your current home, okay? or your current home rather, selling your current home. So, we can go to the next slide. Thank you. All right, there we go. So when it does come time to sell your current home, in terms of market value and whatnot, you brought up the Zillow thing, which is something that I think that is a very important tool for people. It does generalize the pricing, and it can be very, very good, like Tom said. There's other times it can be very, very off, and if you look at the numbers, many times what it does when it doesn't know what to do, it just doubles the SEV, the state value, taxable value, and says that's the value of the house. Well, that's not accurate, and that's probably why the $900,000 one you mentioned, is that on the lake? Yeah, so the taxes aren't, it's different on a lake. Zillow doesn't know that, and so there you go. So it's a good idea, obviously. First step, if you're even considering, I think I may sell, I think I may want to get a condo, I think I may want to move to Florida, I think I may want to whatever, one of the easiest and first things to do, call an agent, have one of us come over and do a price analysis for you. It doesn't cost you a dime, maybe 15, 20 minutes of your time for someone to go through your house, see the features and benefits of it, run back to the office, pull the numbers up, and at least give you something to start with and say, okay, because I run into it all the time. People think, well, my house is probably worth $200,000, and we come back with the numbers and it's worth $250,000. Well, that's pretty good news, but we've also have it the other way too. So to get a professional opinion of what it's worth, it costs you nothing but a few minutes of your time, and then at least you know, or have a pretty good idea. It's an art, not a science. It's not perfect, but it's better than a stab in the dark. The second point there, don't underestimate the emotion. That is, you live in a house, say, 15, 20, 30 years, you maybe raised the children there, you got memories tied to it. You got one of us coming in and saying, get rid of that wallpaper, paint this wall, don't do this. You go, but I put that wallpaper up 15 years ago. It's very important to remember that the moment that the sign goes in the front yard, it's no longer your home. It's a commodity on a market, and it's getting compared to other commodities, other homes. It's a building, and it's hard for people to do. But unfortunately, it's a fact, and if you're looking to sell, there are changes you're going to have to make. We deal with stagers every so often, and one of the first things they'll tell you is probably the person that's buying your house is probably younger than you, and their taste is going to be different than yours. Not good, not bad, just different. And if you recognize that and can stomach that'll help you in terms of getting through the process. Because once it's done, and you move on and you're happy. I'm not really sure why property management's on here again. Maybe it didn't think I covered it well the first time, but that pretty much sums up that section of it anyway. So questions there? No one wants to hear me talk anymore. That's good. All right, thank you all very much.
Good morning. A few things I want to touch on was, I guess, a number of items, whether or not you decide to stay in the home and you maybe only have 10 years left or so on your mortgage. You always have the option to refinance to get that paid off sooner, or, depending on where your interest rate's at. I'm giving you a scenario here. Right now we're offering a 5-year fixed home equity line of credit for 2.99%. So, and obviously those change daily, but those are some of the advantages if you say, hey, I think I'm going to stay here. How can I get this paid off sooner? Maybe save some interest, those kind of things. What I put underneath of here is typically a home equity line does not cost you a thing. Okay, a few different things can come up. Sometimes a title search is required, which is very minimal cost, maybe up to $100. And then in certain circumstances, depending on, like Mike mentioned, was the state equalized value. Depending on where that calculates from the credit union's requirements, they may require an appraisal, an actual full-blown appraisal, and then you're looking at $300 to $350, depending on the appraisal company. Okay, so usually there's no cost involved with the home equity line. Secondly, if you choose that you do want to either purchase a second home or sell, a lot of times, Mike touched on this, you've been there 30 years, it's not an easy transition to just buy a new home and structure the sale and everything all at once. So a lot of times if you choose to sell your property, but you want to move into the new property before you actually close on your existing, you can use your equity, if there is some in your home, as a down payment. Because a lot of times when you're purchasing, you may need some assistance with your down payment from the equity from the sale, or you can use it for the down payment. Okay. Second home purchases. So if you decide you want to keep your current home, but you want to purchase another one, whether it's out of state, whether it's a condo, usually the requirements is 10% down. That's your typical conventional mortgage, excuse me. Okay. What I put on here on portfolio loan options, a few different scenarios here. Okay. Condos, and I don't want to go too far into this, they go through a pretty scrutinized process in regards to being approved condo association. Maybe it's not developed completely yet. They look at a lot of different things. Their insurance as the condo association, their financials. So sometimes it can get complicated. In that case, we do offer a in-house type portfolio loan that Kellogg Credit Union would service and hold, within. So sometimes that's an option on a condo that may not be completely developed that Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac doesn't necessarily approve. Okay. I don't know if I hit on everything. Do you guys have questions in regards to financing parts?
Brian, I do.
Yes.
You've got second home purchase with 10% down. Let me try to construct this sentence. Can you borrow from the equity of the old home, the current home, your base home, against a HELO to make that 10% down payment?
Yes, you can.
Wow.
Basically, secured borrowed funds are an eligible source for your down payment. Okay, so obviously you're going to take your debt to income calculation into consideration, so you would have to qualify for both homes. But yes, your full 10% can come from equity from an existing home. Yes.
Mortgage grantors?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We cannot discriminate due to age, anything like that. Basically, it's same kind of underwriting processes are involved. They're just going to, you're typically on a fixed income, so a pension or a Social Security income. Mm-hmm. So, we're just going to use that. But as far as age is concerned, there is no, you can do a 30-year mortgage at age 95 if you'd like to.
Because it's going to take me a year to clean my house out when I retire.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Only a year?
Yeah. Maybe two.
So, that's what happens when you're there a while.
Okay, Brian, are you from Kellogg Community?
Yes, I am.
I think that I see the
Yep.
logo.
Yep.
I know you're not from Berkshire Hathaway. What does HELOC mean? What does that
Home equity line of credit.
Okay.
Okay, go right ahead.
Are all the credit unions doing that, or is that just your credit union, or
Most all
bank?
banks and or credit unions are offering a home equity line of credit of some sort. They can be variable and they can also be fixed. It depends on your particular goals and situation. Okay.
Well, we've only ever had a 15-year mortgage, and I think we've refinanced 5 times, and we've always started the clock again.
Okay.
But we've never had beyond a 15-year mortgage on our primary residence, but I think we have only 7 years to go, and we haven't refinanced lately, even though the percentage has been low because you pay more tax. I don't know if that's a good scenario. I'm probably about a year away from retirement.
Okay.
I don't know.
Now, that's a scenario where it would be advantageous to sit down and speak with either myself or your current institution, because depending on what your interest rate is, especially if you can lock into a 5-year fixed, if you're cutting your interest rate in half possibly, then there might be definitely some...
Well, before you got up to speak, I was trying to think of a 5-year loan before you even put that up there, and I was thinking we could probably go to a 5-year.
Absolutely, and that's one of those things where there's no costs, typically, depending on your equity position, and you can have that done in usually a week's time.
And what's your last name?
Mallerny. It's spelled Mallernee.
Okay, Trina says she has cards in her office.
Okay, yeah. I have a bunch I can give you if you need to.
We have some loans with Kellogg. We have 12 rental properties, so
Okay.
you have some of our information.
Oh, great. Thank you for that. Lending is kind of a case-by-case thing, so it's one of those things where you pick up the phone and ask the questions, because unfortunately there is the standard conventional rules, but there's always avenues for portfolio loans if it doesn't fit the Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac mold, unfortunately. Okay. Yes?
income, and yet they can afford like a $350,000-$650,000 house. How do you calculate what a person can actually pay for that?
I'll give you the general requirements, and this will be based on conventional. I know with the Federal Housing Administration, if there's an FHA loan, they're a little different. They can go a little higher, which is a bit scary, but that's a preference thing. Typically, you're going to take your monthly gross income, okay? Take all of your other liabilities, credit cards, auto loans, anything that's reported to the credit bureaus, because we're not going to calculate your utilities, your grocery bill, anything like that is not considered into your debt-to-income ratio. But what we're going to take is all liabilities plus your housing expenses with taxes and insurance, and you cannot exceed 45% of your gross monthly income. So all liabilities, mortgage payment cannot exceed 45%. Now with FHA, I see them go up to 57, but that's your car breaks down, you might be in trouble. So I don't recommend going that high, but it happens. Does that help? Yeah. Okay.
As a reminder for those who came in a little bit later, please raise your hand so that I can come to the mic with you. No, so I can bring the mic to you. How's that sound? We are recording this, and we'd like to be able to hear your questions. Thank you.
One other thing I was going to mention is there is payment calculators on our website, and most all financial institutions are going to have mortgage calculators now, which is helpful. Any other questions in regards to financing? I appreciate your guys' time today. Thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions that you'd like to direct to our three speakers?
I don't know who this will go to, but what's the hottest place to buy for a retirement home investment? Yeah, it could be nationwide or locally, or both. Where would you suggest?
I'm not sure that there's a place to suggest, because obviously it is so completely dependent on, for example, when I retire, I'm moving to the mountains. I like cold, I like snow.
Memphis.
Most people are probably not going to do that.
Okay.
Areas to the south, states like Florida, states like Texas that don't have state income taxes have very low property taxes, are typically the places that we're seeing folks drive to. Arizona is another one of those. So, again, when you're looking at retirement and you're looking at retirement home, a lot of parts and pieces that don't necessarily fit in with our world, but more of a financial planning. What is the state's tax situation, and what are the property taxes like in a particular market that you would be looking into? But Florida, Texas, Arizona. Some of the places maybe that you'd be surprised by, some of the states like Mississippi and a couple of other kind of Gulf Coast area states where again tax situations are advantageous.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, if there's no more questions, Tom, do you have any parting words you'd like to make?
Well, I guess again, this is our fourth that we've wrapped up, and again, I know that at least a couple of you have been at more than one. I genuinely appreciate that you've come to listen to us, and I hope along the way you've found some value in at least some of the information that we've shared. If there's anything that you'd like to ask privately that you weren't necessarily comfortable broaching in a larger group environment, we're going to be hanging around for a bit, and you can talk to any of us one-on-one, and we're certainly happy to try to help with anything that we can. And I want to thank you for allowing us to participate in these. Thank you.
And we thank you, Tom and company. I again thank you all for coming to these presentations, and I do say again, watch the MWR website, our All News, and our newsletter to see what other events that MWR is going to have. If you have ideas of things that you'd like us to do, please drop us a line. Either go to the MWR website and send us an email, or stop in and give us face-to-face time and explain a little bit about it, or give us a call. Emails, they all work. So again, thank you. We appreciate you coming, and I wish you a good afternoon.